Time since the American people felt that Washington is capable of doing big things to meet big challenges and to meet their needs. It's why we took on Big Pharma and won. It's why we took on entrenched oil interests and won. And why we're on track to cut carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. It's why we took on the NRA and beat them by passing the first gun safety law in decades. Across the country, our members have been talking about the benefits of the CHIPS and Science Act and, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act, which became law last month. Americans are already seeing the benefits from these accomplishments. The new laws are creating new investments, new jobs, new opportunities for American families and their communities. It's allowed America to pivot into the industries of tomorrow and lead the world, as opposed to lagging, which so many Americans were worried that we would do. So already, a whole host of companies have announced major investments that will help grow our country into the future. Jobs right here in America, not jobs overseas, jobs in industries that have great futures that are not looking backward at the past. For instance, Toyota just announced billions in new investments to start manufacturing batteries for electric and hybrid cars in North Carolina. First Solar announced a $1 billion investment to build a new solar panel manufacturing facility. And the examples go on. Honda and LG Energy also announced over $4 billion in EV battery production. Panasonic, which supplies parts of Tesla's EV, said they're also considering $4 billion to build another plant. And thanks to the tax incentives we passed recently, Samsung decided to accelerate plans to break their own EV battery plant in the U.S. in the next few months. It's clear that the bills passed by the Democratic-led Senate will help drive America forward, lead growth in areas all around the country that have suffered from lack of new investments, and point the way to America leading in the future in future-oriented industries. So, we want to continue to be just as productive during this work period. Democrats are going to keep pushing on the priorities for the American people. As you know, we must fund the government before September 30th, and there are many more things we'd like to get done as well. We will work as hard as we can to accomplish as much as we can in this work period. And we are going to continue filling seats on the federal bench and confirm as many judges as we can. To date, Democrats have confirmed 76 federal judges, far more than the number confirmed at this point in the Trump presidency. Confirming judges has been and will continue to be a top priority for the Senate in the days and weeks to come. With that, let me call on Senator Stabenow.
Well, yes. Well, thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. We are in a bright, newly painted hallway talking about a brighter future. And Senator Schumer said we are very optimistic and very excited about the things we've been doing and that we can continue to do together. But I just want to take us back because it's been a historic 20 months. When President Biden took office and the new Democratic majorities came in, we weren't all standing here together. I mean, we were home Zooming. Our kids were not in school. Our businesses were just barely hanging on. And so we went to work immediately, put our heads down to make sure that we saved lives, got children back in school, saved our restaurants, small businesses, helped people get their lives back. That was step one. Now, step two is that we as Democrats are laser focused on rebuilding America and bringing jobs home. And the great news is we have the fastest job growth in history, since President Biden took office. 10 million new jobs have been created. I'm particularly excited for Michigan to have 660,000 of those be manufacturing, with more to come. We're rebuilding our roads and our bridges and broadband, investing in clean energy manufacturing that frankly is going to bring millions of jobs home. The investments will put our country on track, as Senator Schumer said, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% in 8 years. 8 years. and we know we have more to do. Our investments are also lowering costs for Americans. The average American household will save up to $1,000 on their energy bills each year from what we have done. The cost of prescription drugs going down. For the first time, Medicare will negotiate prescription drug prices. Folks on Medicare will see insulin costs capped at $35 a month. And I've been all over Michigan in the last few weeks. This is a really big deal for people, a really big deal. Lower out-of-pocket prescription costs, free vaccines, and we're reducing the deficit by $300 billion just by doing something really simple, saying that the most powerful and the wealthy should pay by the same rules as working people and pay their fair share. And this is after we passed the first gun safety measures in decades with the largest investment in mental health services ever in the history of our country, which I don't think we focus enough on. Also a very big deal. Simply put, we have, as Democrats, have stood up to big pharma, big oil, the gun lobby, corporations that don't pay taxes, and we have won on behalf of the American people. And we are going to continue to put people first.
Senator Warren.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. Democrats are on the move. 2 weeks ago, the President of the United States canceled student loan debt for tens of millions of Americans. 20 million Americans woke up on Thursday of that week without student loan debt for the first time in their adult lives. Another 23 million Americans saw their debt loads significantly reduced. I want to say a very special thank you to my partner in this, Senator Schumer, who has been a leader who has fought this fight, and also Senator Warnock, who has been absolutely relentless, as all three of us have spoken with the White House, have spoken publicly, have pushed to get this across the finish line. It matters so much to so many working people across this country. 40% of those getting help do not have a college diploma. The unions were behind it. This was ultimately the Democrats doing what Democrats do best, helping working people. The week before that, the work that I've done for a long time with the administration meant that the FDA finally put out the rules so that the cost of hearing aids will go down. By mid-October, hearing aids are going to be available over the counter. For the 20 million people with hearing loss, only about 1 out of 5 who can afford to get hearing aids. This will be life-changing. And the week before that, we got the Inflation Reduction Act through, a commitment to a 40% reduction in carbon emissions in less than 8 years, paid for by our 15% minimum tax on billionaire corporations. Before that, it was chips, it was science, it was guns. This is about Democrats who are on the move. But we still have work to do. It is absolutely critical that we have a judiciary that actually follows the law. And what we will be doing this month and on through the rest of this year is getting as many judicial nominees through as we can. We think it is critically important that we have those judges who will read the law and fairly interpret it. So it's exciting to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Smith.
Thank you. Thank you to my colleagues, and hello to all of you. It's great to see you again. It feels sort of like the second day back at school. I want to just bring your attention briefly to some of the accomplishments of the Inflation Reduction Act for Americans. This is going to be putting us in a position to lead on innovation and development for clean energy and the clean energy transition, saving money for consumers and delivering on our commitments to take bold action on the climate emergency. And we are already seeing firms race to develop projects to build out clean energy and green technology. A lithium processing factory facility in Tennessee, which will help to break our dependence on these critical supply chains with unfriendly and sometimes hostile countries. Another example, as Senator Schumer said, First Solar, which has announced that it will be investing $1.2 billion to build out a new solar manufacturing facility in the United States. Now, analysts are telling us that this will result in hundreds of billions of dollars in private investment that will create hundreds of thousands of new jobs. And this money has been waiting on the sidelines for this law to get passed, and now that we have gotten it done, it's going to swing into action too. I want to just note that when I was home in Minnesota in August, I heard firsthand from people who appreciate the benefit of this and are excited to hear about what this might mean for their community. Here's just one last example. In Becker, Minnesota, the Sherco coal-fired plant. This is a plant that is now going to be retiring from coal. It is going to be powered by solar energy with batteries there in order to ease the transition. And most importantly, this is going to benefit the good union jobs in that community that have been working to make sure that the lights go on for Minnesotans for decades are now going to have an opportunity to participate in this clean energy future. That's the kind of results that Democrats are delivering, and I can't wait to get back to work to do even more. Thank you.
As you can see, we are really excited about what we've done and how it's going to help the American people. Yes.
Senator Schumer, do you have an update, or will you hold an up and down vote on same-sex marriage, and do you have 60 votes yet?
Okay, so first let's remember why a vote on the respect for marriage is necessary. Millions upon millions of American women had their right taken away by the extremist MAGA Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision. And in a concurring opinion, Justice Thomas opened the door to the Supreme Court going even further. The MAGA Republicans are taking over the Republican Party, and they've made it abundantly clear they're not satisfied with repealing Roe. So when some Republicans say, oh, a vote's unnecessary, it won't happen, they said the same thing about Roe. And here's where we are. So we had a very good conversation today in our caucus about marriage equality. We all want to pass this quickly. Only our two leading members on this issue, Senators Baldwin and Sinema, are working with Republicans to see if there are enough votes to pass the bill. But let me be clear, a vote will happen. A vote on marriage equality will happen on the Senate floor in the coming weeks, and I hope there will be 10 Republicans to support it. Yes?
Is marriage equality going to be looped in with the larger CR that you guys are talking
We
about?
would prefer to do it as a separate bill. We hope there are 10 Republicans to help us with that. Yes, yes.
How long on the CR are you willing to go into the new year? Would you prefer a longer spending bill because you guys, didn't get your spending priorities implemented till March? Does that help you?
Look, we want to get it. We prefer to get an omnibus bill done before the end of the year. We think there are a good number of Republicans who agree with that, and so we're hoping about mid-December. The CR will go till about mid-December, and then we might do an omnibus.
Senator Schumer, have you in fact promised Joe Manchin includes the permitting reform in the CR?
Permitting reform is part of the IRA, and we will get it done. Yes.
Are you concerned that Republicans are opposed to COVID aid, monkeypox aid, and increased Ukraine funding for the CR?
Yeah, look, we're opposed. Let me say a couple of things here. Ukraine needs more help. We want to give it to them. And on monkeypox and on COVID relief, we need to be prepared. We've always been prepared as a country. And it's disgraceful that Republicans are playing political games with this when the health of the nation is at stake. Yes.
Schumer, President Putin was speaking in Vladivostok today, where he said Russia has been able to reach all of its strategic goals and hasn't lost anything. Do you agree with him?
Who believes Putin these days? Yes.
On the election reform bills that the working group released, do you plan to hold a vote on those, and will they be in the lame duck session?
It's something we'd like to get done, and we're going to try to figure out the best way to get it done. Yes.
Have you requested a database briefing on the Mar-a-Lago documents, and if so, when do you expect to get that?
Look, I have a great deal of faith in Merrick Garland and how he's pursuing it. And in terms of the specifics, our Intelligence Committee is working very closely with them to see, that our secrets, what has happened to our secrets, and to see what should be done about that. Last one.
With regard to permitting reform, the deal that you struck in the press release you sent out with Senator Manchin, it said that you would have that resolved in this fiscal year.
Yes.
Senator Manchin said that is the CR. That can only be the CR.
Our intention is to add it to the CR, absolutely. Okay?
No
Thank
threat
you,
of a
everybody.
shutdown, no worry about a shutdown.
he said, I thought he said December, but they would run through December.
You said Omni, I thought you said September.
Right.
Oh, I thought you said September.
No, CR to December.
Okay.
But hopefully do the omnibus later.
Right, okay, sorry, I misheard that.
Thanks, Paul.
September, December, you know. I know. Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
That's a lot.
So it was mid-December or just December?
I think it just said December.
Okay. Okay,
I mean, you know that's always
I know,
the 7th through the 14th.
right.
Usually, yeah.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Here we are again. Over the month of August, I expect my experience was not unlike many others. Everybody at home is worried about inflation, crime, open borders. And in Kentucky in particular, we have a different level of concern with regard to the horrendous flooding that occurred in a southeastern Appalachian part of my state, where I spent a good deal of time over the last month. As we look ahead, obviously the one thing we need to do is to pass a continuing resolution to take us to some date that will be, I guess, determined by the majority past the election. I think the key to getting the CR done with the least amount of controversy is for it to be as clean as possible.
Well, it was just days, and 8 days to be exact, after the Democrats had touted the deficit reduction in their reckless tax and spending spree, that they did away with all the deficit reduction. The president, with a stroke of the pen, with his student loan forgiveness program, literally added, according to the Penn-Wharton budget model, $600 billion to $1 trillion to the debt. So much for deficit reduction. And the idea that this is actually canceled or forgiven is a misnomer. This is simply debt that is being transferred from the 13% of the people in this country who have student loans to the 87% of people in this country who don't have student loans. It's a slap in the face to people who have worked hard to pay their loans off, people who didn't have the opportunity to go to college in the first place, parents who scrimped and saved to get their kids' education paid for, or our vets who can use the GI program to go to school. But the fact of the matter is, what they did is going to be inflationary on so many levels. First and foremost, of course, is college tuition. There isn't anything about this that isn't going to make college tuition go up. What college is going to look at this and say, well, we can just raise tuition because they're just going to wipe out the debt. We'll just raise it by whatever that amount is. And on a more general level, it's going to fuel the inflationary fire that has consumed so many families and households across this country who are paying more literally for everything, from gasoline to utilities to food. Everything in their lives has gone up as a result of inflation. And the Democrats doubled down. They just flat out doubled down on all the spending that they've done, in this case without any vote occurring in the United States Congress, up to $1 trillion in new debt that is going to be put on the backs of the 87% of the people in this country who don't have student loans and don't have student debt. It is fundamentally unfair to tens of millions of Americans in this country. And the Democrats demonstrated once again, they don't care about fiscal responsibility, they don't care about debt or deficit reduction. Right now, they care about one thing, and that is buying votes going into a November election.
Last week, President Biden gave a political speech flanked by Marines. And then he lied to the American people and said it was a policy speech. If it had been a policy speech, he might have talked about some of the things that are keeping Americans awake at night as they worry about their future and the future for their families. Never once did he say anything about prices, inflation, gas, the border, crime, the cartels, fentanyl, or our debt. Not a single word. No, the president shut his eyes to the pain that he has caused the American people, and then he looks down his nose at tens of millions of Americans who go to work and pay their taxes and who are being hurt by an economy that the president himself has undermined. I had a chance to visit the Wyoming Food Bank this last couple of weeks. Food banks across the country are really getting hurt by increasing demand. The demands are so high because people are falling further and further behind. People are struggling to pay their bills, to keep up, to make ends meet. People have had to cut back on lots of things in their lives. They've had to cut back on school supplies. They've had to cut back on back-to-school clothing for their kids. They feel pain every time they go to the gas station or the grocery store. The kitchen table is not full of food. It's full of a stack of bills and an empty paycheck and an empty checkbook. Food prices in the last year are up 13% across the United States. That's the fastest increase in food prices since 1979. And we're talking about food that people need every day. We're talking about milk and eggs and meat and fruit and vegetables. But for 16 months in a row now, prices have gone up faster than pay. And that's why people are falling further behind and they feel stuck and squeezed and stressed. Republicans want to get down the prices, want to stop this inflation. The way to do it is unleashing American energy, cutting Washington red tape, and stopping this reckless Washington spending. That's the way we get our country back on the right track.
Well, our friends on the other side, in the bill that they passed right before we left, the reconciliation bill, decided that the government could do a better job managing the healthcare and pharmaceutical system than people could in a competitive marketplace. Just a few years ago, they decided they could do a better job with the healthcare system with the so-called Affordable Care Act, which turned out not to be very affordable at all. One of the ways it was going to be affordable was taking the student loans out of the private sector with a government guarantee, and the government would collect the student loans, and the interest from the student loans would fund Obamacare. Well, I said at the time, and others did too, this is the beginning of the end of an effective student loan program. Once you put the government in charge of collecting loans will not be collected in the way they have been before. And so they proved that. They also proved, by the way, in the reconciliation bill that Obamacare is not working in other ways, because one of the big hundreds of billions of dollars of spending in that bill was to subsidize people who make up to $400,000 who couldn't buy insurance under the current Affordable Care Act system. As it turned out, the Affordable Care Act wasn't very affordable at all, and it's not affordable when the government comes in and eliminates the competitive marketplace, or decides that the competitive marketplace is working so well that we could run this just as well as the competitive marketplace was, only to find out that a decade later, we decide we're just going to forgive all the loans, because forgiving the loans is easier than collecting the loans. And as Senator Thune said, for people who didn't go to college because they couldn't afford it, or people who got a certificate that was helpful to them to get a job but no grants or loans were available for those kinds of programs, or people who went right to work, or people who paid their loans off, those are the people who are now responsible for the somewhere between $600 billion and $1 trillion that's just been transferred from the income side of the government balance sheet to the debt side of the government balance sheet. Unbelievably unfair, unbelievably short-sighted, If you look at what's just happened and think people are going to be rushing to pay their student loans off in the future, you're just not thinking about how people react to this kind of government irresponsibility.
Welcome back to DC. I hope everybody was able to get out of this bubble. I had the great pleasure of going home to Iowa and being out on the 99 county tour. Senator Chuck Grassley has completed his 99 county tour. I have a few more yet to go. I am very close. But while I was out and about across Iowa, I did a number of public town halls and hearing from Iowans. And number one, and you barely hear about it here, inflation. Right? I know we had this bill called the Inflation Reduction Act, but it's not reducing inflation. And Iowans are really feeling the heat. We have many folks in my own neighborhood. They're working second jobs now because they can't afford the cost of sending their kids back to school. Maybe they need a new pair of cleats for their kids, whatever it is. They're working second jobs. We have this student loan transference. It's not debt forgiveness, it's transferring student loan debt to hardworking Iowans and Americans. Folks like my brother, who is a union laborer. He did not go to college, he went straight into the workforce. Now he's being told he will pay for the student loans of some dude that just got a six-figure job working on Wall Street. How is that fair, folks? How is that fair? Iowans are really ticked off about this, and you can tell I'm ticked off. My sister worked her way through community college. I was fortunate enough to get scholarships to go to school. But where is the responsibility out there? You sign your name on the line, you need to pay it back. That's how Iowans feel. Don't put it on my sister's back, don't put it on my brother's back, okay? So let's go back to the drawing board. Let's make sure we're talking about things we need to do to reduce inflation, to get fuel prices down, to make sure that Iowans can afford the cost of heating their home this fall and winter. Let's get back to the basics here in the United States and do what we're supposed to do. Let's stop all the shenanigans right here in Congress and make sure we're taking care of our citizens.
As I traveled across Florida during the recess, what a lot of people talked about was inflation. You have people going to food banks, they're delaying their retirement, they're coming out of retirement, they're taking second jobs. And if you look at, actually look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics information, we're not creating a lot of new full-time jobs, we're creating part-time jobs. That's what's going on around this country. So the latest is they're mad about this student loan bailout. So what we did was we take somebody like in our state, a construction worker, we have a lot of construction workers in our state building homes and things, and they're going to pay off the debt for some young person that just finished school, maybe went to an Ivy League school and got a job on Wall Street. Nobody thinks that's fair. By the way, it's not money we have. It's money, it's just new debt of the federal government. That's exactly what it is. So let's look at what the number is. It's up to $1 trillion. How in the world does a president have the right to just on their own increase the debt of this country by $1 trillion? We already had $30 trillion worth of debt. So I think it's important that we figure out how to get a vote on this and stop this. This is wrong. It's unfair to people all across the state. My state, it's unfair to people all across the country. I think it's important we get a vote on that. We got to start, our higher education institutions need to start held accountable for their tuition increases and their kids not getting jobs. This is completely unfair to people like the construction workers in my state that didn't go to college, they're working hard, some of them even have 2 jobs, but now they're paying for somebody who went to an Ivy League school and get a job on Wall Street.
Senator McConnell. Does a clean CR, in your mind, mean no money for Ukraine? And are you concerned about getting Ukraine money in either the CR or the omnibus because it might be harder to pass some of that money next year?
Well, I think the cleaner the CR, the better. Ukraine is obviously a priority for most of us on both sides of the aisle. We'll have to see what they're requesting and how much of it is actually designed to help Ukraine wage the war. These are the discussions that are going on right now with Senator Shelby and his team and Senator Leahy and his team. But overall, the cleaner, the better.
Leader McConnell, would you support Donald Trump helping Republicans more financially in the midterms? And also, what is the Republican plan to make up for the cash crunch of the NRSC?
Well, look, what I think I can safely say is all 50 members of the Senate on my side of the aisle are doing everything they can to find a way to help get to 51. And that's exactly what the other side's doing. And once we finish up our work here this month, we'll all be in full campaign mode.
Leader McConnell, thank you so much. Switching to Iran, White House today said there's still gaps when it comes to signing the nuclear deal between the Islamic Republic. Some members of your party traveled, including Senator Lindsey Graham, to Jerusalem lately and said they're opposed to the nuclear deal. When it comes to Iran nuclear deal, has your position changed? And do you think if the Republicans win the midterm, they would have more leverage to resist the nuclear deal, signing a nuclear deal with Iran?
Well, it appears as if this administration, like the Obama administration, is going to take the view that they can do an executive decision, an executive agreement with the Iranians by themselves. It's not a treaty. We objected to their going forward the last time without a treaty, which clearly applies to this situation. They may try to do that again, which minimizes our ability to impact what has all the earmarks of another bad deal.
Leader McConnell, as a member of the Gang of Eight, do you want a briefing from the Department of Justice or other intelligence agencies about what documents were seized at Mar-a-Lago, and do you have any concerns about the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, I'm not, having just gotten back, I've not personally talked to any of the other Gang of Eight about this. I think Senator Rubio's addressed that issue, so maybe you ought to ask him.
Leader McConnell, do you think it's appropriate the way that the former president was storing those top secret and classified documents at his private estate at Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, I don't really have any comments on this whole investigation that's been dominating the news for the last month. I think we're following it like all of you are.
Those are classified documents, Mr. Leader. I mean, that's important. You don't have any comment on that?